Hey friends, Nina here. We are talking about the Amber Alert and the disappearance in 1996 of Amber Hagerman. I picked this case because May is Missing Persons Month, and Amber, while she may not be the best known as an individual, her case has probably had the largest impact on missing persons cases in the United States and globally of any case that I know of. So we're going to talk about her disappearance today. It was January 13th, 1996 that Amber and her brother Ricky went for a bike ride, but only one of them would make it home alive. So come with me to a spring-like day in 1996 when the disappearance of a child would forever change the way that we handle missing children's cases. Amber Renee Hagerman was born November 25th, 1996 to parents Donna Whitson and Richard Hagerman. When Amber was school-aged, she joined Girl Scouts, she liked riding her bike, and she was a big fan of butterflies. Amber had a little brother, Ricky, who was born in 1991. Now, Amber grew up in Arlington, Texas, which is near Dallas-Fort Worth, and if you're a sports fan, Arlington is the home of the Texas Rangers baseball team and the Dallas Cowboys football team. Amber's family was no stranger to publicity. In the years prior to her disappearance, Amber's family participated in a TV production about families struggling to get off of public assistance. It was on Saturday, January 13th, 1996, that Donna Whitson, Amber's mother, took her two children to visit her parents, Glenda and Jimmy Whitson. Now, before getting to the grandparents' house, they'd been at the park and they'd gone to Burger King for lunch. And it was a little bit after 3 o'clock that day that 9-year-old Amber and 5-year-old Ricky wanted to go for a bike ride. Now, they were lucky kids in that their grandparents had bikes at the house that they could ride, which I think is kind of cool. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. It was a really nice January day. It's like 70 degrees, so Mom's like, yep, you can go outside, but you can only ride around the block. Do not go anywhere else. Unfortunately, Amber and Ricky decided to ride their bikes to the parking lot of an abandoned Winn-Dixie grocery store about a block and a half from their grandparents' home. The lot has a ramp that children often played on, and this area is surrounded by residential homes on one side, and then on the other side there's some businesses, including a laundromat. Ricky and Amber are riding their bikes. Ricky makes a loop around the parking lot and says, you know what, we should go home. I don't want to get in trouble. And instead of following her brother, Amber says, you go home, I'm going to stay here and ride my bike. Reluctantly, Ricky headed back toward his grandparents' house without his sister. Once there, Amber's grandparents say, hey, where's Sissy? And Ricky said, oh, she's out riding her bike. And they say, Ricky, go get your sister. So he rides back up to the parking lot, and there is no sign of Amber, but her bike is laying there abandoned. So he turns back around, races home, and tells them, hey, Sissy's gone. Amber's grandfather, Jimmy Whitson, he gets in his truck and races up to the parking lot, and when he arrives, police are already on scene looking for Amber. Now, from the time Amber and Ricky left the Whitson home to ride bikes to the time that Jimmy Whitson arrived at the parking lot looking for her was about 8 minutes. You know, they say these things happen in the blink of an eye, and in this case, in Amber's case, she was away from home less than 10 minutes. She spent most of that time with her brother, and she was still snatched. If you're wondering how police arrived on scene before Amber's grandparents did, well, her kidnapping was witnessed by one of the neighbors whose home overlooked the Winn-Dixie parking lot. Jim Kevel, a 78-year-old retired machinist, he was working in his backyard across from the parking lot, and he saw Amber riding her bike up and down the ramp. He also saw a black or dark-colored pickup truck enter the parking lot and drive up to near where Amber was. A man got out of the truck and grabbed Amber off of her bike, and she's fighting and she screamed, and this Jim Kevel witnesses the whole thing. He says that the truck with Amber left the parking lot and turned west on East Abrams Street, moving away from the freeway. And this is notable because if he'd gone toward the freeway, he would have been heading out of town, away from Arlington to somewhere else, but he turned into town. Jim Kevel realized that he had just witnessed a kidnapping, and he immediately called 911. There was a cruiser in the area. Police response time was about 3 minutes, which was remarkable. But it didn't matter. Amber was already gone. Kevel described the man who took Amber as a white or Hispanic male, aged 25 to 40, with a medium build and under 6 feet tall. So he was average height, average build, Not a great description. It's not going to lead you to one specific person. The truck was described as black, dark blue, or even dark in color. Now, at this point, only Jim Kevel has come forth as a witness, but police believe that customers in the nearby laundromat may have seen the kidnapping or seen the truck, and they want to talk with them. Police go to the press and ask witnesses to come forward. A local man will say that he saw a pickup truck cruising the area near the grocery store, but this was 30 to 45 minutes before the abduction, so he's not sure if it's related. They're hopeful that Amber is still alive at this point, and they call in the FBI to ask for assistance putting together a profile and helping them find her and bring her home. The FBI puts together this profile that says that this is an opportunistic predator, which he just snatched Amber because she was alone. He lives or works in or around Arlington because he seems comfortable with the area. He is white or Hispanic and most likely suffered a stressor in the days or weeks prior to the crime, meaning he lost his job, he got divorced, a relationship ended, he had a death in the family. Some big stressor led up to this event where he snatched Amber. He lives in a place with enough privacy, possibly a private home, so that he could hold Amber. He probably does not live in an apartment, and he may have a criminal record. He's probably known to police. One of the analysts that worked on Amber's case was Ruben D. Rodriguez Jr. He is of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is NCMEC, great organization. He thought that Amber may have been known to this perpetrator, which got me thinking about the video footage they took of Amber when her family was in that documentary about families trying to get off of public assistance. Rodriguez described the way that Amber was viciously taken from her bike as the actions of a desperate person. With Amber missing, her family is understandably devastated, and the community rallies around them. They donate food, they volunteer to search. People are making up pink ribbons to tie around the neighborhood. Pink is Amber's favorite color. And these gestures, they're so kind and they're so thoughtful, but they do not help bring Amber home. On the morning of January 17th, about 4 days after she's missing, a man walking his dog by the Forest Hills Apartments in Arlington, which is just a couple of miles from where Amber's grandparents live, they find the body of Amber Hagerman. Her remains were located in a creek and there was water running over her. Now, the day before she was found, there had been a big rainstorm, a thunderstorm, which swelled the creek, so it's possible that Amber was not dumped where she was found, but was dumped a little further upstream. Amber's cause of death was the slash wound to her throat. She had also been beaten and repeatedly sexually assaulted. Amber's body was found nude with the exception of one sock, and that's notable because we're going to talk about that again in a minute. And I want to clarify here that while Amber was sexually assaulted, the assault stopped just short of intercourse. So if you look at early news reports, some will say that Amber was not raped. Others describe it as assaulted repeatedly, and I think the discrepancy there is based on how you define rape. When the autopsy is done, the medical examiner found that Amber had been kept alive for at least 2 days after the kidnapping and did not die until January 15th or 16th. Remember, Amber's mom took her and her brother to Burger King just a couple of hours before she was abducted, and where that food was or was not in her system would have a lot to do with lining up a time of death for her. Her body was found in a stream, which means that a lot of evidence is washed away. I do know that they found some fibers which were collected and analyzed. They've never said if there's DNA in her case. In fact, the Arlington police has been very guarded, understandably guarded, with what information they have put out about her case in terms of what evidence they have. A lot of times police agencies are tight-lipped because they're trying to protect the integrity of the investigation for future prosecution. And considering what was done to this little girl, you absolutely want to have a solid case for prosecution. Now, several men have been investigated as possible suspects in this case, such as Terafon Adnan, William Reese, and Richard Franks. William Reese was a serial killer who killed and dumped women in the Texas killing fields, and he was convicted of murdering 12-year-old Laura Smither, whose murder bears a striking resemblance to the death of Amber Hagerman. Laura Smither was 12 years old in 1997 when she was seen leaving her home to go on a jog in Friendswood, Texas. Friendswood is south near Houston. It's not in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. When Laura didn't return home, she was reported missing. Her body was found several weeks later. Like Amber, she was found in a pool of water, nude except for one sock. Kind of an unusual way to find someone, and you've got two murdered children within 15 months of each other in the same state, found in the same condition, in water, one sock. A few months later, a man kidnapped a woman outside of Houston. Thankfully, the woman escaped, and William Reese was arrested. Years later, while he was in jail for the kidnapping, Reese led investigators to the body of missing woman Kelly Cox. And eventually, Reese is going to be convicted of 4 murders, several rapes, physical assaults, and kidnappings. But I do not believe Reese ever admitted to the murder of Laura Smither. He committed his crimes between April and July of '97, which is when he was arrested in July. On the day of Laura's disappearance, he was working construction on her street, and because it started to rain that day, the crew was sent home early. This is about the same time that Laura Smither left her house. It's been pointed out that Smither does not seem to fit the type of Reese's victims. All of the other women killed or victimized by Reese were adult women. Smither was 12 years old, and she looked like a 12-year-old girl. She did not look like a woman. But victimology is fluid. It can change. Bundy was an opportunistic killer, but people like to say, oh, he killed dark-haired women, he killed college-age dark-haired women who had a center-parted hair. In reality, he killed all types of women. He killed blondes, he killed non-white women, high-risk women, low-risk women, women in their 30s, as well as young teens. He did not have one type that he killed. Gary Ridgway, he is remembered for killing sex workers, but he also killed daycare workers, waitresses, high school students, and mothers who were waiting at bus stops. Women who varied in age from early teens to late 30s. Again, opportunistic. They will go outside of their type if they have an opportunity to kill. So victimology, let's not use that to rule out victims. But Laura was younger, smaller, and younger looking than Reese's other victims. Some internet sleuths believe that Reese either killed young girls such as Amber, or he was not involved in this at all, and Smither was killed by someone else, maybe the same person that killed Amber. Now, I said earlier, both of these crimes took place in Texas and involved girls who looked similarly, and their deaths are very similar, but Friendswood is about 300 miles from Arlington. So in my opinion, I don't think these murders are related just because of the distance. Others have linked Amber's murder to the case of Opal Jennings. Opal was 6 years old in 1999 when she was abducted from the yard of her Fort Worth home, where she was playing with her cousin, who was 2, and their friend, who was 4. A man in a purple-black car drove up to the kids, said hi, and grabbed Opal. This abduction happened in the same metro area in the middle of the day with multiple witnesses around. Also, Opal looks a lot like Amber. I mean, a lot like Amber. It's almost creepy. Dark hair, light eyes, the blunt cut bangs, they look like sisters. Richard Franks, a local sex offender, he was convicted of Jennings' murder and sentenced to life soon after the crime. Now, some people think Franks could be Amber's abductor as well. He has light coloring and would have been in his early to mid-20s at the time of Amber's abduction, so his description is not a great match to what our witness saw. And there's some speculation that Franks wasn't even involved in Jenner's death. In the 1990s, Franks had been convicted of once of indecency with a child, but he's also been described as slow or maybe disabled in some way. In 1999, Frank's brother lived on the same street as Jennings, so you've got that proximity thing, just like you had with Reese and Laura Smithers. While police were looking into area sex offenders, Frank's name came up, and he drove a purple-black car, and he had a ponytail. He was arrested, interrogated, he confessed, and then he recanted his confession. He confessed to abducting Opal, but not to killing her. He was tried in 2000, but ended in a hung jury. Jurors are concerned that his confession was coerced. He was later retried just for kidnapping and found guilty of that. Now, whether or not Franks was the perpetrator of this crime, the abduction and murders of Amber and Opal are very similar. Both of them were snatched in the middle of the day. Finally, I want to talk about the Amber Alert system. Amber stands for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response, and it was born out of a phone call that took place in 1996. It was after Amber's disappearance. A mom and massage therapist from Dallas, a woman named Diana Simone, she called a local radio station and said, "Hey, you put out broadcasts for severe weather. What if you put out broadcasts when a child went missing?" Diana Simone theorized, and I think she's right here, that if people knew a black truck was the vehicle that Amber was taken in, someone would have spotted the vehicle and someone would have called it in. Amber was taken in the middle of the afternoon from a busy area. Someone saw something. Her call to a radio station spurred creation of the Amber Alert. By the early 2000s, every U.S. state and 20 other countries have implemented an Amber Alert system. According to NCMEC, over 900 children have been returned home because of Amber Alerts in the U.S. alone, which is great. There's also evidence that the Amber Alert system serves as a deterrent for stranger abductions because those numbers have decreased since the 80s and 90s. And according to NCMEC, more than 20 stranger abductions have been stopped by the Amber Alert system. Here we are, 24 years later, and Amber's case is unsolved, but her legacy clearly lives on. I'd like to know what you think happened to Amber. Leave me a comment in the comment section. That wraps us up for this week. This episode was researched by Reddit user Quirky Motor and co-written by me, Nina Instead. I appreciate you listening, and please be safe.